I have a bullet journal. If that thing's closed, if it's not open, if it's closed, it's dead to me. But the more I thought about getting a different day job teaching here in Japan and just always being stuck in that and only writing in these tiny little crags of my life, the more anxious and depressed I became. In my vlog video that I relaunched my channel with, I talked a bit about how finding direction meant the world to me in being inspired enough to return to YouTube and also inspired enough to actually face my writing head on and to actually attempt to race towards the job I truly want rather than holding myself back in a job that was a day job. Now, I want to specify before I start with this video that there are a lot of other factors that of course come into play when it comes to facing your fears and taking accountability for your writing. One of the first ones I want to say is your situation. This includes financial and family situations. I fully understand that there are people that are in really, really, really bad spots, and your survival comes before everything else. That being said, you are also, at the end of the day, responsible for all your decisions, including your decision to put your writing on hold. And one of the most powerful things you can do is to admit that. Do not try to shove that off as like, oh, well, I want to be a writer so bad, or I want to be an editor so bad, but like, I'm just always tired from my day job. Like, I get that. I'm working in a foreign country. I'm surrounded by people who don't speak my language like at all most of the time. I know what exhaustion feels like, trust me, but one of the major things that I've come to a crossroads at with therapy was that I had to start taking accountability for what I was actually doing, but also what I chose not to do. So yes, I'm working full time. Yes, it's exhausting, but I do have weekends. I do have some time in the morning before I go to work. What am I doing with that time? Exactly. Am I doing my craft? Because let me tell you something. Since my health spiral, I've only attempted to make one short story, and I haven't even finished that. And it's not through lack of ability. It's not through lack of trying. It's not through lack of not setting alarms and making an attempt, but I lacked direction. Like, yes, I loved writing and I wanted to do it, but what was the overall goal? Like, yeah. You want to be published. Okay, I wanted to be published. I still want to be published, but I didn't have hard due dates for myself. I didn't have a very strict plan where I'm doing this research by this date. That research will complete and this is the next step. Like, I didn't have a breakdown of that. Because at the end of the day, I was terrified of what the next steps were. The next step was editing. The next step was the world judging me for my work. The next step was being vulnerable as an author and possible editor, and I was terrified of that. But instead of facing my fear, I just kept putting it off. But the more I thought about getting a different day job teaching here in Japan and just always being stuck in that and only writing in these tiny little crags of my life, the more anxious and depressed I became. And so my therapist was like, well, what do you want? What will it take to get you there? And why aren't you doing it? And I had to take accountability for me not actually moving forward. I know what I need to do, so I need to do it. Making the decision to actually do it was the very first step for me. It was being on that precipice once again, right before I went for Japan, that precipice of do I or don't I? For real. If I do this, my life changes. And I was right back at that cliff's edge, and I had to make the decision. This is what I'm doing. Once I made that decision, a lot of the anxiety went down, and the only anxiety I had left was how do I do it? And that was the anxiety that almost overwhelmed me, so I just sat down and made a list. So, step one, make the decision. Whatever that decision may be. For me, it's I have the the big goal of being a freelance editor. I want to also have my works published, at least 2 of my works published prior to that, so people can kind of vet me and see what kind of an editor I would be based on my books. Those are the big goals, right? But in order to accomplish some of that, some of it was also relaunching this channel and relaunching activity between me and other authors and accountability of that, and the accountability that comes with being in the community, because that actually does benefit me. But I need to change the direction of the channel to make sure it's actually going in a direction that's helpful to me. So that was the first one, is making the decision to do it. 2, how do I do that? So I grabbed a scrap piece of paper and I just wrote down every single step, every single thing I needed to do, regardless of order. I just got it on paper because my brain is a hive mind of crazy, and I couldn't at the moment differentiate where everything went. So I just wrote it on a piece of paper. And then I took a break away, stepped back, came back to it, and wrote down numbers next to the steps. Now some of these, the numbers are kind of wonky because some of these will continue on. They start at one point, but they're going to take quite a long time to finish. So other steps will happen while one step is still ongoing. These are called rolling goals for me. And then I organize them. I organize them on the back of the paper in a better order along with due dates. So I set myself some goal dates of when I want to complete some of this stuff. Then I took that and I created my cork board. Well, actually, I didn't have a board, so I had to go to Daiso at 8 p.m. at night before they close at 9 and buy a cork board. My cork board is definitely not the most beautiful. It's not, at one point it might be more aesthetically pleasing. Right now, it's mostly just a physical reminder in this world that I have stuff I need to be doing. As far as the decision making, always reminding myself of the decision I made, I have artwork that I have created using quotes, and that hangs next to my head so I see it when I wake up in the morning and when I go to bed at night. And one of those artworks says that the fears you don't face become your limits. And that was really important to me because that I faced my fear of coming to Japan. So I've overcome my limit of living in only one country. I've overcome that limit. But what about my limit on myself as an author? What am I limiting myself to? I was really limiting myself to always being the author that isn't published because I was so terrified of that next step. But I was completely corralling myself into this tiny box that I was never going to get out of unless I actually started moving. And I know that sounds like a kind of no-duh thing, but there comes a point when you just realize that whatever you're doing right now is not serving you. It's holding you back, and you just need to stop that behavior, be accountable, take ownership that you're not doing anything that you're supposed to be doing. Start moving forward even though it's terrifying. So out of all these lists, then I also started using a program called Notion. So in Notion, I started looking into creating boards showing all of my ideas for YouTube. I used a lunch period during work to write down every YouTube video I could imagine. I had a lot of them, interestingly enough, because once I figured out what my goal was, I actually had ideas for the channel. Turns to find out a lot of my blockage was because of my fears. Honestly, if you're at a crossroads as a writer and you feel like you're being blocked, you might want to look into what you're afraid of as a writer, because I guarantee you that might be what's slowing you down considerably. Another huge part of everything was admitting that I don't work the way most people do. So this is something that not all of you are going to identify with, but some of you might, so it's worth saying. I have finally admitted that my brain does not function the way most brains do. I need physical representation in the physical world right in front of me, because if I have a closed book, a closed notebook, because I have a bullet journal. You guys have seen some of my bullet journal stuff on my channel. I have a bullet journal. If that thing's closed, if it's not open, if it's closed, it's dead to me. I won't open it. I don't know what's in it. It's closed. It's dead. The same with my computer. Notion is wonderful, like wonderful, but I have to open it. That's what the corkboard is for. Without that corkboard, I won't get things done, because if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. Oh my gosh. I also have things where body doubling is definitely necessary for me, and at some point I'll do a video a little bit more on that and how I've used it to help me. But I utilize rooms like zone.hours in order to do sessions, to really get myself held accountable to getting things done. But more than anything, I hold myself accountable. I don't want to be the same place next year that I was this year. I want to be further along. I really do. I've already spent 1 year, going on 2 years now in Japan, and I don't feel as an artist I've progressed all that far. As an individual, I'm progressing rapidly due to therapy, which I highly recommend if you're having a hard time like I did and you're having a really hard time getting things done. Look into therapy. I'm so serious. I realize not everyone has access to that, but if you can, please do so. If not, there are lots of therapists that have social media. Just make sure you really check to make sure they're actually certified therapists and not just shams. But there are some good therapists that put a lot of information out there for free. Please follow and utilize that. Once again, take accountability for your health and do what you can, where you can, as much as you can to take care of yourself. And yeah, own your writing. I can't stress that enough. One last thing, please don't rely on writing friends or artist friends in general to help you. This is going to sound a little depressing, but you really need to be able to do this by yourself. Yes, there are certain people that you will meet along the way that you have to utilize, like publishers, editors, things like that. But those are people that have a work contract with you. I'm talking about don't rely on friends in the industry. And the reason I say that is because there are quite a few artists and other creative friends of mine that I've actually paused for. I've paused in my life to try to either help them in some way or because, I don't know, I want to kind of have part of the journey with them. And I very rapidly realized that's not healthy for either of us. Everyone's creative writing journey is their own, and everyone's going to be in a different spot, and that's okay. Well, it's okay for your past to like sync up and to be on a journey with someone for a time. Don't count on that happening. I think it's really easy as artists to try to feel like I really just need to be around other people when I write. Like, my writing friend is just never available. You know you have the internet now, right? There are all kinds of writing sprints that happen all the time on YouTube alone, not to mention Twitch and other sources. Start utilizing that. If, like me, you get overwhelmed really easily and you just tend to shut down when you're overwhelmed, then it might be as simple as just finding ways to organize your life like I did to make it easier to do. But you're gonna have to experiment. You're gonna have to experiment with a lot of different things to find that which clicks, but you need to do it. Take responsibility for your writing and find your direction. And when you find the direction that you want to be going, you're gonna pick up the speed. Let me know if any of you guys use any of the systems I have mentioned to kind of like organize your writing and or filming projects. I'd be interested to know. I'm not sure where this video is gonna be posted. See, that's the problem with doing everything months in advance is where are you going? I have a calendar for that.